This is the most hotly anticipated golf shaft ever? What's happening, Panda Nation? Peter Von Panda here. It isn't often that I bring you something that is game-changing in the world of golf, but today I might not only have something that's game-changing, but I might have two of them. And what I hold in my hand here is something that is hotly anticipated. So hotly anticipated you might not know of it, which means it's a hotly anticipated secret. But if you have been following social media, you may have seen this come up, and it's called FreeFlex, and this is a golf shaft. This is a raw golf shaft, as you can see, no adapter or grip or anything. It's brand new. Looks pretty awesome. But FreeFlex, I actually started following because they made some outrageous claims, and I just actually thought this was the new version of AutoFlex. So you have probably not, but you maybe have seen my old videos about the AutoFlex shaft. I love it. I game one. I use pretty much exclusively either the AutoFlex or the BGT Brava shaft. They are both fantastic shafts, and they give me more distance. There's just no two ways about it. I know some people have mixed results with them, but for me, absolutely. I just can't game anything, including my fitted shaft, any better than I can, say, the AutoFlex or the Brava. Now, this shaft makes some claims that are just like those, longer, more distance, less dispersion, faster club head speeds, the works. And so I was super excited about it, but I will tell you what I learned is that FreeFlex has no affiliation with AutoFlex, a Korean company. I guess that's why I thought it might be part of AutoFlex that makes something very, very innovative here. And in fact, I was doing some reading about it and trying to decide, is this something that I should try? Is it just a gimmick? Does it have any hidden Korean technology or Korea hidden technology or whatever they called it? But the guy who actually invented these shafts, I think, was doing an interview with GolfWorks or something like that, and he was just talking about the torque and the deflection of the golf shaft and how he can control a couple of different things, like the flexibility versus the torque independently. And I'm not sure if he's doing that through the weave or the construction or the design. I'm not sure, but I have some ideas on how that might be done, and I think some of that evidence might be actually printed on the shaft itself. So, the fact that he says he can make basically a no torque shaft that flexes a ton, so you get that speed, but you don't get that deflection of the head that you might get like when you're using a very whippy golf shaft, like a Ladies Light Flex or an A-Flex or something like that. Because as you probably know, yeah, you can get more speed. Actually, Bryson DeChambeau, I think, uses an A-Flex when he is in the long drive competition. So that just kind of shows you it does work. Even fast swingers, right? You get that extra whip effect. But what you can do is kind of send that ball off in different directions, right? So he says that he can build basically like a no torque, 1-2 degree torque shaft and have it very whippy. That itself is intriguing. It's kind of the same thing I think AutoFlex promises. But he seems to have solved a couple of the problems that AutoFlex users tend to complain about and stuff that I have seen. So first of all, I want to talk to you about the additional loft you get from a very whippy shaft. Part of that is because kind of the head starts to race ahead of the shaft a little bit, and it gives you some extra dynamic loft. If you're using a very flexible shaft, a whippy shaft in any club, you can kind of add a few more degrees of loft. And part of that, I think, is because when the ball impacts, it kind of pushes the top back. You get a little bit more of this dynamic loft. I'm not totally sure of all the reasons that it does it, or if it's the toe droop, or the club tends to stay open a little bit more. But for whatever reason, I have noticed that if I play an AutoFlex shaft, I basically have to accommodate the extra loft I'm getting from the shaft flex by lofting down the club, in my case, a driver, about 2 degrees. So normally I would play a driver at about 11.5 degrees, but I have noticed that if I play a driver at 9.5 degrees with the AutoFlex shaft, it kind of gives me that same launch that 11.5 degree driver is. So it's just kind of one of those things I've noticed. Now, these shafts advertise that they only add about half as much loft, which is actually nice because now you can get a driver head that is a little closer to something that you would buy for any shaft. And on top of that, you might not have to go to a new driver head, right? So a lot of us will buy a 10.5 or 12 degree driver head. But now if you realize that you need 9.5 degrees, you can't get a 12 degree down that low. So what this does is it means that the driver head you're using, yeah, you might have to kind of make that adjustment to 1 degree, 1.5 degree, but that is usually within the range of the loft sleeves on most drivers. So that's really nice. The second thing that is really nice about this that a lot of people have complained about is that it will tolerate heavier swing weights or more typical swing weights. So what I have here are two different shafts. There's, I think, 3 different levels, but only 2 of them would really apply to my swing speeds. And this is the one that I'm most interested in. You can see it has this rainbow watercolor effect. It's really quite beautiful, and I actually wouldn't normally have a shaft like this, but I don't want to cover this up because it does really kind of look cool. It kind of has a graffiti look. But what I want to show you here is that this is the 38 gram shaft. It's the 38 series. It's really meant for swing speeds, I think, about 80 to 99 miles an hour, which is right where I swing. But this is the shaft that should probably fit me best. So I'm excited about seeing what this one will do. Now, I believe what they suggest is that you have a swing weight here of anywhere from D0 to D3. So this will tolerate basically kind of any standard driver head. You're not gonna have to worry about trying to figure out how to lower the head weight to get that swing weight down, which is really nice. So I think you can just kind of install that. Most people have found that removing a few grams of head weight from their driver head is where the AutoFlex really sings. So for people that just kind of stick on a driver head that is maybe a D2, D3 normally, the AutoFlex just doesn't like that. It likes D0 or even a little bit lighter, in my opinion. So I have always kind of found that if you have like a 10 gram weight in the back, you can replace that with a 5 gram or a 4 gram weight. That's really where the AutoFlex starts to come together. So I really love the fact that this driver shaft here kind of tolerates and is recommended to be used with the heavier swing weight. So they've figured out a way to make a very flexible shaft work with those heavier swing weights. Now, this is their 45 series, 45 gram shaft. Not a whole lot heavier, 7 grams heavier than the other one. But this one, I actually think, will tolerate anywhere from D1 to D5. So if you swing a little faster, like a little heavier driver head, then this is the one you'll probably want. Now, this one is a little bit cleaner. It's kind of this shiny navy blue. It's actually a really beautiful looking shaft here. You can see the FreeFlex information printed in silver there. Now, I want to go down here because I think it's actually a little easier to see than on this one. But if you go down here towards the tip end of the shaft, you can see we have this little black band and we have some printing on it. But I'm just going to go here to the blue one because they're basically the same. But down here we have some printing and it says Specialty Joy. Haha, I like that. But right there, it says spline and we have an alignment line. And I'm not sure if it's the puring or something like that that they do at the factory, but basically this is important. Now, this is actually going to cause maybe some people a little bit of a problem. This line is supposed to be up. And as far as I can tell, maybe in line with your thumbs, right, when you are holding your driver shaft. So this is the top of that line. And so when you are installing your driver adapter, your hosel adapter here, you want to make sure that little marking, which is usually on the back or the bottom, is directly opposite of where the spline marking is. Now, what this does potentially, though, is means that it's not going to work as well if you do some adjustment to your driver head here. So for me, I would say, again, I would probably set this to 10.5 degrees, a little higher than my AutoFlex, a degree higher than my AutoFlex. And I would put the hosel adapter on here to accommodate that. But if you get out there and you're like, oh man, I need that extra degree of launch angle or whatever it is, if you adjust that, it's going to move that spline slightly out of position here. So if you don't know what that's going to be yet, maybe it'll accommodate a little bit of adjustment, but as far as I know, this is supposed to be directly up and down right on the shaft. So that might be a little bit more of a restriction than the AutoFlex, which didn't have a spline marking. Looking through this, I don't see anything that screams to me really different here. But I will say that where the spline marking is on the top, when I'm looking through this, and you probably won't be able to see it, it just looks like there's a little bit of a rib going down the top along that spline line. And so I'm not sure if there's just a slight reinforcement or something like that. It's kind of hard to see. You kind of have to rotate it, but it looks like a seam, kind of like a melted seam where two pieces are coming together. But the way these are manufactured and spun and rolled, I don't know if that is intentional or just happens to be kind of a coincidence in this one. The other thing I will say here is that I don't know if it's just because these are really light, but if I hold this up, you can probably see all the way through there. And I would say that it seems to be fairly straight and stiff in its resting configuration here. One of the things that I noticed about the AutoFlex is that even under its own weight, if I were to hold it down here, it would droop just maybe a little bit, and when I would look through it, you couldn't necessarily see all the way through it because there was just a little bit of droop through the shaft. But this does not seem to have that issue. It seems to be straight all the way through there. Now, I do want to show you though that it is pretty flexible, right? And you can see if I hold it down here on the end, this is uncut here, but you can see that it's flexing pretty good there. So obviously it has some flexibility that you would expect in these types of game improvement shafts, a little speed optimization shafts. And down here, I don't see anything that strikes me as particularly different. The walls of the graphite or carbon fiber or whatever they're using seem to be pretty standard. Now, one of the things that I want to show you here, and it's on both of these, is that we have these markings up here on the butt end of the club, and these are so that you can mark, you know, what length you need the club and then trim it right on there. So that's actually pretty brilliant, because this sometimes is like an unfinished portion of the shaft. I really love that they put these markings here so you can know if you want 45.5 and mark it, 44.5, whatever. And so I wish more clubs would do that. So that is what those are for, to kind of adjust your length of the club when you need to. Now, the other thing they say is do not tip these shafts. I guess all the magic is probably down here where it just kicks and whips and sends your ball off into oblivion. So any adjustment you need to the shaft length has to be done on the butt end here. So this is where you're going to cut. They actually said to use like compressed air to put on the grip without tape, you know, if you needed to adjust. I think for most people, you know what length of shaft you need. But, you know, if you're new to golf or something like that and want to experiment around, what I would probably do is experiment with some other standard shafts before you cut into this shaft, all right? The other thing, and this isn't really germane to deciding if you are going to buy this thing or not, but I love the fact that they sent this. It kind of looks like a long bullet or a torpedo tube. This is all metal here, and what I love about this is that this is the case that they sent it in. So it's actually a little hard to get them out of here. My fingers are kind of fat. What I actually had to do was kind of put a pen in here and just kind of grab the plastic that the shaft was wrapped in and pull it out. But because this is super strong, I didn't have to worry about the shaft getting broken. In fact, one of the auto shafts that I bought actually was broken on the end. They sent it in like a plastic tube, but it was broken in the end. This is, I don't know, I guess maybe it's plastic, but it certainly seems like it's metal, like a thin metal. And, you know, all the shafts, both the shafts came in absolutely perfect condition. So it's pretty cool looking. I don't know. I just feel like I would keep this thing because it is so badass looking. Again, it's just the shipping materials, but I loved it. Now, the last thing that I want to say about these shafts is that they are not cheap. But when you're talking about AutoFlex shafts that start at like $790, $800, you know, I don't know that you have to race to the bottom if you're making a competitive shaft, but these are much cheaper than the AutoFlex shafts. So at $650, you know, they're about 20% cheaper, but they're not being given away. But if some of you have been like, you know, I'm not spending $800 on a shaft, but you would spend, you know, $400 or $500 on a Ventus or something like that, and you're thinking, well, maybe a couple $100, $150, $200 more for something that really does give me 15 extra yards potentially, you know, why not do it? So not cheap, pretty expensive. I would definitely call them premium priced, but I am really curious if this particular one here, this kind of watercolor Monet looking shaft here, is going to be the one that I'm gaming this year. So I'm really kind of curious to see what I can get out of it. And then we're going to go to the simulator and start hitting some balls and see if we can crush some bombs. All I do is hit dingers. All right, let's get this thing set up, try it out. All right, so what we want to know here is how does the AutoFlex shaft compare to the new FreeFlex shaft? So I've got my new driver head here, the Ping G430, and I have built these shafts to be exactly the same. So same length, I have used the same Jumbo Max Straight Tech extra small grip on both of them, and not going to adjust the head, but let us see what we get on the AutoFlex shaft here, and then compare it to the FreeFlex.
I saw your sister at work, I saw your mama at church, I'm pretty sure I saw your car at the mall. I see your face in the clouds, I smell your perfume in crowds, I swear your number's on my phone once a call. It's kind of funny how I can't seem to get away from you. It's almost like you don't want me to. You've got a cold heart and a cold hard truth. I got a bottle of whiskey, but I got no proof that you showed up tonight in in that dress just to mess with my
Alright,
head.
time to switch out the head to the FreeFlex shaft here and try that one out. Alright, got my ping head here on my FreeFlex shaft, that rainbow goodness. Like I said, the same grip here. And now we will see if it can do what my beloved AutoFlex shaft has done for me in the past. And I will tell you, it is just as waggly as the AutoFlex. And I will show you that the spline line is straight up and down. It actually feels whippier than the AutoFlex. And that's funny to me because it can tolerate heavier head weight apparently, but
So much for so long, out of sight, out of mind. Girl, you're looking so good. It's
not the worst maiden voyage with this shaft. What's interesting here is the launch angle is 18.1, a little higher than I would like. Man, right out of the gate, that's as good as I generally expect with the AutoFlex. So, man, I'll tell you what, I feel like I'm going to break the shaft just because it's so whippy. But I guess that's what I felt like when I first started hitting the AutoFlex too, and have never broken one yet. I have found that playing this in the draw setting has helped me a little bit, but I'm actually going to move this back to the standard setting and see if that gets rid of that left-hand turn that I'm getting. All right, got the weight back in the neutral position here, just see if that helps straighten this out a little bit.
So much for so long, out of sight, out of mind. Girl,
Didn't
you're
hurt.
looking so good, it's driving me out
Oh
of
my.
mind. Are you breaking my
Alright.
heart? Baby, you're playing hard
So far,
to forget.
I'm liking what I'm seeing.
Told me to leave all your things out on the porch on a swing. Come and grab them by the end of the week. It's just some jeans and a shirt, but
I feel like I'm hitting them a little higher than I would like. I wonder what the launch angle on that was. 18 degrees, so a little higher. I mean, I feel like I should crank this down a little bit just to see what I'd be getting in the 15-degree range. So I'm actually going to lower the loft just a little bit on this, just 1 degree. All right, I've actually gone ahead and lofted this down 1.5 degrees, so instead of a 9, it's playing like a 7.5 degree head. However, the problem here is that you can see the spline is now lined up with that trailing edge of the driver. So I know that is not what they recommend, but we are gonna try it anyway. Because I think a lot of us, you know, as you're dialing it in, you may be adjusting what the head is set up as, and yes, you can have that shaft adapter pulled and reset. So you may want to do that, but if you are trying to figure out what lofted head you need for the launch angle that you're getting, I think this is how you do it. So let's see. It doesn't really feel any different to me, but proof could be in the pudding, so. Okay, that went way more right than I thought. I actually thought I hit that pretty good. So there absolutely may be something to the spline. Launch angle is down just a little bit, about a degree. So I'm gonna hit it again and see if it keeps pushing right, and just see if that is actually the side effect of not having the spline set up correctly. Okay, that one seemed to be fairly straight. So it could have just been user error. But man, it's still getting the distance, even with the spline off. So 242 total, 216 carry. I am really liking this so far. For me, and my swing speeds, those are all very nice numbers. All right, I will tell you what, first shots with the FreeFlex and everything about it seems to be working very nicely. I think, actually, I will go back and take off the hosel adapter and adjust it so that the spline is up with the loft setting that I want here, because the results seem to be pretty nice. I will also say that for whatever reason, the draw or fade settings that you dial into a club on the movable weights seem to be exaggerated with the shaft. For at least me, going back to the neutral setting here was actually a big help. Yeah, holy smokes, that's straight as an arrow. Alright guys, back from the simulator, and I thought I would show you my results because I thought, you know, they're actually pretty surprising. I was hoping for some amazing results from a brand new player in the shaft game. Probably not shafts in general, but at least in this new whippy, super flexible, super long, super straight shaft game, the FreeFlex shaft, well, it definitely surprised me. So let me show you the results here. And sorry, the picture isn't great. I took a photo with my phone of the screen. So what we have here is the Ping G430 Max driver head on an AutoFlex shaft, and then on the lower one, the FreeFlex shaft, same length, same grip, same driver head. So everything's the same, and I hit, a handful of shots. I removed the ones that were just really bad user error here. And as you can see, they are very, very close, but I had some insights here. But I wanted to break down some of the specific data points here and give you my thoughts on them. So, one, on carry, the FreeFlex was the longest with an average of 212 yards. AutoFlex was 211 yards. Very, very close. What I thought was interesting is that the total was the reverse. The AutoFlex actually had the longest total shots, 236.8, 237 yards, and the FreeFlex was 235.4. So about a yard longer total, but a yard longer on carry, being reversed. So the FreeFlex was about a yard longer on carry, but a yard shorter on total. Now, I do want to say here that these total numbers in the simulator, 236.8, 235.4, are bang on what I saw with the AutoFlex last year playing in the real world. So I had an average driver distance of 232 in the real world last year. So the fact that this says 237, seems to be just about right, because it's not taking into account wind and terrain and all sorts of other stuff. So none of these numbers are suspect to me, all right? What I want to show you here is actually ball speed. So this is the one that really kind of surprised me. FreeFlex was 126 miles per hour and AutoFlex was 125. This is basically 1 mile per hour faster than the AutoFlex. But 1 mile per hour faster ball speed should equate to about 2 to 3 extra yards. So the funny thing about that is, based on the numbers I just showed you, the carry and the total distances, you would expect the FreeFlex to actually be measurably longer, like 3 yards longer on both carry and total distance. But I think the issue here is the launch angle. So the AutoFlex was 16.3 and the FreeFlex was 16.9. I definitely noticed that some of the FreeFlex shots were higher than I expected, even compared to the AutoFlex. So I don't know if I rolled in that footage, but about halfway through with the FreeFlex, I did loft it back down using the adjustable hosel, and I still averaged very high launches. Now, I think that's because of the extra whippiness in the tip or the shaft in general, because when you get a really flexible shaft, you tend to get more of this dynamic loft and launch, right? So the fact that it seems a little more flexible may mean I'm getting that extra mile per hour ball speed, but also a little higher launch. So one thing that I would keep in mind is that a lot of people have said that they have lofted down their drivers using the AutoFlex. I think you might have to loft down your driver on the FreeFlex as much as you're doing on the AutoFlex, or maybe even a little more. That extra launch, even though overall it's only about a degree higher, I think ends up resulting in more spin as well. So not only you're getting a higher launch, but that ball will kind of creep and travel up a little higher, and thus my angle of descent on the back end was a little steeper, which is why I was getting more carry, but not necessarily more rollout. So I think if I could continue to dial it in and get the loft down on my driver, that I could get 3 yards longer on my AutoFlex. Again, not a huge difference, right? Not a huge difference, but there is the potential in my mind to change nothing right here with the user and actually just get 3 more free yards overall. So that's pretty enticing. However, I could not adjust the driver down anymore because that spline kept getting out of whack. So that spline line on the top that's supposed to stay on the top on the Ping drivers, because you can only clock the driver head, it kept moving out of alignment, and I don't know how far away from the center line you can get before you negate the benefits of the way the shaft is constructed. So I do have a solution for that, I believe. I'll talk about that at the end here. I also want to show you the best shot. So I went through the data and I just wanted to see what the absolute best shots were. Actually, AutoFlex had the longest shot here, 242.8. FreeFlex was pretty close, 242.3. So on the max end for me with both of these, the AutoFlex was just a smidge longer. Again, that might actually be because of the launch angle, the extra spin, and the descent angle. So the FreeFlex actually might have best shot capability here in the future. So let me talk about what I love and what I don't love about the FreeFlex shaft, all right? So the first thing that I really love is that it tolerates heavier head weights. So in the past, when I was using my Cobra LTDX driver, I think it has a 14 gram weight, and I removed that and I put a 10 gram weight just to get the head weight down, because the AutoFlex seems to perform better with just a little lighter head weight. On top of that, I think because of the lighter head weight, you're getting a little bit more speed, but you're not getting the same smash factor. But a lot of people like that heavy feel of the head. And so the fact that the FreeFlex shaft says, just play your driver as is, D1 through D4, whatever, I think is going to appeal to a lot more people than the AutoFlex did, because it kind of suggested a lighter head weight. All right. The other thing that they say, and I suffer from this, is that the FreeFlex tolerates jerkier swings. So they say that the AutoFlex really benefits from a nice smooth swing, and that if you really jerk it, I don't know if it bends too much or whatever, but the FreeFlex shaft says it doesn't matter. If you have kind of this jerky swing, a little bit more punctuated move to it, which I tend to do sometimes I'm nice and smooth, sometimes I feel like I'm trying to crush it and I just kind of go at it. Because of the way they construct it, and because they have done something to increase torque but allow it to be flexible, I think that jerkiness, which might torque the shaft normally, doesn't torque it as much, so you can have a little bit of a punchier, kind of a hitter's type swing with the FreeFlex shaft in a way that the AutoFlex might not tolerate. The thing that I do love about this is that they seem to give you the same distance benefit. So one of the things that I didn't put in here, but I tested it against my fitted air speeder shaft, again, about 12 yards longer than my airspeeder shaft. So I know the AutoFlex technology works. I know some people have said that they don't get any benefit from it. Some people said, that they just use an A-Flex or whatever. And some people say that over their stiff shaft versus AutoFlex, they don't see any gains. For me, I absolutely saw them across the board in the real world. And I would tell you that the FreeFlex gives me all of the same distance benefits, and potentially a little bit more, right? The other thing that I actually like, this might not be a positive for you, but because I was playing the Ping Max driver in the draw setting, so I'd move the weight to the draw setting, just because usually I hit a little closer to the heel than the toe, and when the weight is in the draw setting, it just tends to feel a little bit better. There's a little bit more weight right behind the ball, and because my natural tendency is maybe just to have just the slightest fade, this helps me kind of just put it into a draw a little bit more often. What I noticed is that when I was in that draw setting, the FreeFlex really pulled them left. So I think that if you are a heavy slicer and you rely on those draw settings, you use the drivers that are draw biased and all that, and it's still not enough for you, putting in a shaft like the FreeFlex might actually work with the weight bias of the head even more. So I know that some draw settings are like 8 to 20 yards of draw bias, but if you put in the FreeFlex shaft with a draw bias weighting on the head, I don't know, you might get 30 yards of draw bias. So if you are really struggling with a slice or the reverse, then having the shaft also complement the weight that you do in the head might actually be a benefit. So for me, I just moved the weight back to neutral, and it was just shooting arrows right down the middle, which was kind of crazy. All right. The other thing that I love about this is that it's cheaper than the AutoFlex. So the AutoFlex is expensive for sure. $800-900, I think. This is something like $650. So it's not cheap, but it's $200 cheaper than the AutoFlex, so that's a huge advantage. The other thing I like is that it's not pink. Yes, that rainbow color actually is kind of iridescent, and it actually looks pretty nice. I actually don't mind it. Normally, I would probably be like, I'm going to shaft wrap that. But the other one that I got is just kind of this matte navy blue. It looks actually really nice, and so I love the fact that they're a little more traditional colors. It's not the hot pink. I don't need to advertise all the time that I'm using little tools to help me get better, right? So what don't I love about the FreeFlex? So I don't love the fact that it has this spline that always needs to be top, right? Because what this does is it negates basically your adjustable hosels on most of your drivers. So the Cobra, the TaylorMade, the Ping, the PXG are all just clocking hosels. So you rotate the shaft to the head. And so if you do that, the spline is going to move relative to the head. Now, I don't know if being within 10 degrees or 45 degrees of that line, you still get the benefit. And I'm not sure if it's simply puring or not. But like I said, when I looked through the shaft, I could see a little bit of a ridge going down that spline. So I think there is something about that that helps it maybe be more like a bubble shaft. Remember when those shafts had like this flat, squished piece in the middle? That keeps it more on line, that reduces the torque. I'm not sure. But for me, I like keeping that spline right in the middle. And if you are using a driver that doesn't allow that, then you have to mount that adapter perfectly the first time or to whatever you're going to use, and you're not going to be able to adjust it. Or if you do want to adjust it, you're probably going to have to pull the adapter and then re-glue it, so it doesn't give you as much adjustability. Now, I will say, I think I figured this out because I am going to actually try this with the Callaway Paradigm driver, and if I get similar results, I can use that head. And what the Callaway adapter does is that when you adjust it, you adjust the little sleeves and the head stays lined up. So I think that's going to fix it for me. So the FreeFlex shaft with Callaway driver users is probably a perfect pairing because of the way the hosel works. Or actually Crank Golf, because Crank Golf I think uses a similar version of adapter that Callaway does. So if you use a crank driver, then you're probably good to go there. The other thing that I don't love is that it's still expensive. $600 or $650 for a shaft is still expensive. But yes, would it be awesome if someone made an AutoFlex shaft that's $200? This is still expensive, but what I've realized here is that it's not so stupid expensive that you can't make it work, right? If you really love golf, you've got your clubs figured out, you were thinking about spending $600 on the Callaway Paradigm driver head, then this might be a much better option for you. Heads just don't give you the distance anymore, right? Those core limitations just don't allow drivers to give you more distance. They can give you more forgiveness. But if you are someone who just buys a new driver each year, then you're already spending $600 a year, right, on the upgrade. So a $600 shaft might be the best thing that you've ever gotten, because this could add, I wouldn't be surprised if most people get 10 to 12 additional yards from this. I wouldn't be surprised if some people get 15 to 20 additional yards from this. So I think that there is some really awesome tech in here that is as good or better than the AutoFlex at a cheaper price point, and it's more attractive. So do I like the FreeFlex? I absolutely love it. I love the idea that they have figured out how to balance the torque and the whippiness. You know, somehow they did it in the AutoFlex too, but maybe even taking it a step further with that spline. And even though the spline is a limitation, you know, combined with the Callaway Paradigm driver head, it just might be the perfect driver for me. So that is what I'm gaming this year, is the Callaway Paradigm driver on the FreeFlex 30 series shaft. I am super excited about it. I'm definitely going to be testing it more, and we will see what the upper end of my drives are this year. But I am hoping to not be any shorter than I was at 232 last year. And I would love, with the improvements in my tech, as well as the improvements with the idiot behind the tech, to be able to get a little closer to 250 this year. So I am hopeful that at the end of the summer, I will have averaged a little closer to that. And I think the FreeFlex is a big step in that direction. So if you are someone who really wants your drives to improve in terms of accuracy and distance, and you have been tempted by the AutoFlex, but you have been turned off by the high price point, then I think the FreeFlex is definitely something to consider. If you have the means, I highly recommend it. I am really excited about this. I think this is just another step in the general direction of this technology getting more and more accessible to the masses because it works. And for us amateur golfers that don't have a lot of time to practice and just want to go out and enjoy ourselves and play as good as we possibly can, man, this FreeFlex shaft definitely works. So I am super excited about it. I cannot wait to play more with it. Obviously, I'll be playing in the simulator with it the rest of the winter here, but as soon as the weather breaks, I'm taking that guy out onto the course, and I am hoping that it just drops some bombs, because I have been super happy with the AutoFlex over the past couple of years, but the FreeFlex is hopefully the next step up from it. So if you want to pick up a FreeFlex shaft, I will put a link to it in the description below. Peter Von Panda, out.
We can discover more and explore so much deeper.